Hey guys, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to SiDEBAR Forever. If you like the show, please subscribe to us at sidebarforever.com, as well as share episodes of the podcast on your social media. That way, new listeners can find us as well. Vaccines are here. People are getting inoculated, and there's hope for the future. But with COVID numbers still surging around the globe, most of us are sticking close to home and avoiding crowds. And that means conventions too. Attending comic conventions has been an integral part of fandom since the 1970s. However, with local health boards advising against large gatherings, every major convention in America has gone virtual, as in online. So, your three hosts decided it would be fun, and a little emotional if we're being honest, to sit down and reminisce over some of our fondest con memories. Step into the Wayback Machine with us as Dwight describes his first Atlanta Fantasy Fair. Swain shares a HeroesCon story involving Kurt Cobain and a comic artist named Kubert. I, Adrian, recall getting so nervous meeting the Silver Age great Nick Cardy, and all three of us recall our favorite moments from Spectrum Fantastic Art Live. Those were the days when the only things we feared were a little nerd BO and the convention crud. But hey, what are some of your favorite convention memories, and what do you miss the most about attending shows? As always, thanks for listening.
Hey, Adrian, why do you think you waited so late to go to conventions? Is it just because you came to comics later, or no?
Yeah, because I got into comics officially when I was about 13 or 14, and so I was still so fresh. I would read in Wizard that there were conventions going on, but I had no idea how to get to them. Like, I hadn't even started riding the bus yet around Atlanta, until like I was about later when I was 14, going on 15. But I still didn't know that, there's Dragon Con down there. They do have conventions around the city, but I wasn't that mobile like that. But yeah, I finally didn't go to my first convention, as embarrassed as I am to say it, until like I was about 25 or 26. And that was HeroesCon in Charlotte. It was 2006, yo. And it was like,
okay.
Oh, snaps. Man, it's crazy.
Right.
But it's so funny because you see a whole heritage, with these conventions. It's like like those sports documentaries where it's like they show Hall of Fame performances by Jim Brown, Sandy Koufax, whomever. That's how it is when you look over the history of like those conventions. You see like all these great moments. It's like, oh shit, Frank Miller was here in Atlanta and John Byrne.
Right.
And Jim Starlin, stuff like that, where you're like, wow. So it's like almost like a tapestry of history and wonder that comes with these conventions. You know what I'm saying? So I hate that I missed out on that stuff. Even for like the stars of my heyday, who would have been like the Image guys or the hot people like that I would have loved to have seen when I was 13 or 14.
Right.
Yeah.
You said yours is back in the 80s at the Atlanta Fantasy Fair?
Yep. And like some of the people that were there at that time, man, were like Bill Sienkiewicz and Bob Layton. It was crazy, dude. It was crazy. It was Jim Owsley. Also known as
you
Christopher
foul,
Priest.
yo.
Also known as Chris.
You foul, yo.
Nice.
Also known as Christopher Priest. It's just a bunch of people, man. I wanted to meet with John Byrne, but I missed the John Byrne because John Byrne came here doing a winter convention, which was weird, not during an actual fantasy fair. So, but yeah, it was crazy. Like Adrian said, man, my first experience going into one was my uncle paid for it for me. It was $20, and the kind of convention paper we had back then, it wasn't a big like nice sized companion information catalog to go along with it. It was a little flimsy pamphlet that was foldable. They could mail you. It was a mailer.
Yeah. I remember that.
But I did get a chance to meet Jim Starlin, yo.
Boy.
And he did this great picture of the Hulk, and all his muscular majesty coming out of the swamp, dude. It was fantastic. And again, so I got a chance to meet him. And I couldn't afford a sketch back then. Sketches back then were really cheap, dude. Sketches back then were like $15 a pop. But as I was going to the convention, I was going to maybe spend $15 at the convention. If that's all I had in my pocket, in spite of the other con stuff I was planning on getting. So that was out of the question. But I'm walking to the convention door, and this maniac dressed in a crazy Robin Hood suit comes running through, saying, a slightly homicidal, crazy, maniacal archer coming through. Those were his words. And my mother and my uncle look at each other and like, okay, do you really want to be here? It's like, yeah, I do. It's like, yeah, I do. And as I proceeded through there, man, I was like walking like you said, Adrian, walking into a menagerie of Wonderland, dude, like stuff you've never seen before. Full scale freaking alien, like dressed from head to toe, full, like not just a bust, but head to toe, man. Like walking around, doing this skulking thing. It was just fantastic. I fell in love at that point, dude. It's like, and I made my rounds to the different tables, but I was like, wow, I was immersed, and I loved it ever since.
Who were some of the fantasy artists, or were you even into them in that way at that time? Who were some of the fantasy artists that were at the show?
I also that's where I met Michael Whalen, yeah. He just done that full size Elric and Manibity poster, man. Elric is stepping on the neck of the lizard creature, holding it up, dude. I was like, wow.
Okay.
I was like, wow, just blew me away, dude. And he was very, very nice and amicable. And let's see, I think Freya might have been there. Chris Freya, it's not Chris Freya.
Kelly Frias.
Kelly Frias might have been there. Yeah, it might have been there. Yeah, and he wasn't. He was exhibiting. He had his own table, of course, but he wasn't like, he was old. He was old even at that point. I mean, Kelly's been around for a long time. So, but and I didn't see Boris at that when I wanted to see Boris. Rowena might have been there.
Okay.
Okay.
And of course the pennies. The pennies were everywhere, dude. Eric.
Yeah.
they were like Wendy and Eric. Is it Eric? Wendy and
Richard
and Wendy. They were from the Elf Quest.
They were ever present, yo. They were always in the mix.
Every panel they were asked to go to, they went to. They're just very accommodating people, man. They were just a husband and wife couple team. They're really nice people, man.
Did she was Wendy wearing the Red Sonja chainmail bikini?
No, she wasn't.
Okay.
No. Because at that time, the cosplay queen was none other than married to Lamar Waldron, which was Susan Barrows.
Okay.
Susan Barrows wore all the costumes.
So for people listening, Lamar Waldron was the guy who promoted and ran the Atlanta Fantasy Fair,
right.
And his wife, like Dee is pointing out, was a famous, locally famous and regionally famous cosplayer. Didn't she used to dress up like Phoenix?
Yes, yo.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Killed the Phoenix too, yo. It was gorgeous, man. She worked it.
Yeah.
And she walked around and pranced around, and I was looking at her. Which there she is.
Yeah.
It's like that song by your boy, man, Babyface, man. Watching her go. There she goes.
Oh. There she goes. Yeah.
Style her. Yeah. It was like that, man.
Yeah.
And man. And costumes back then were, I mean, they were still learning costuming, so they were either like really, really good clothing replicas or these crazy foam tries that were kind of stiff. And some people had a Hollywood flair. Some people were just like garage basement learning how to do it. And it was
right.
It was warm. It was good that they were doing it, but it was just like, okay, that's not quite where you're supposed to be. But good, I see you. Keep moving it. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it was magical, man. All those comics, dude. And you started seeing, okay, this is also a place, like you said, Adrian, where the locals came to share their wares too. So you had, Oxford Bookstore pull up. You had Book Nook pull up. You had Titans pull up. They all had their own little small, not so small tables, but tables around the outer areas.
Also Fisher's Bookstore, which was down in College Park off of Riverdale Road.
Okay. Fisher's?
Yeah, maybe even in Riverdale proper, but Fisher's Bookstore.
Okay.
Yeah, and that actually predates like Titans.
Wow.
Which showed up the street. I used to get my mom and anybody who would to take me to Fisher's bookstore.
Okay.
Because he had like, it was, novels and paperbacks, and then he had like a nudie section in the back.
Of course.
But he had an expansive comic collection, and at the time he kind of, it seems as if Fisher, the guy, he kind of thought a lot of himself.
Oh.
Like, I don't know.
Why do you say that?
Like some nerds. Like some nerds do, just an air of I am a
bookstore,
an available bachelor, and I have my own business. That kind of vibe.
Wow.
And but you know what you're pointing out, D, about the cosplay back then. So this is in the 1980s that we're kind of referencing. Mm-hmm. And this predates like Lycra and leather and the kind of more slightly military inspired, costumes that we see in the Marvel movies and in the DC movies now, where they're using lots of different textures for costumes. There was a lot of spandex back then.
Yeah.
It was exactly what people were trying to replicate, Green Lantern and Phoenix and Storm and Catwoman and Batman, and so there was lots of spandex as opposed to leather and other textures. So like you said, it didn't, it certainly wasn't to the level that it is now, where people are, literally kind of making it, almost like their livelihoods, to be cosplayers and to be effective ones.
For sure. Yeah, so I saw more Raggedy Vulcan ears and not care to shake a stick at,
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was a wondrous time, man. During that time, that was, like I said, that was one of my first couple of conventions. That it was at that age, and for a long time I fell off of conventions. And I think the last one I went to, as far as Atlanta Fantasy Fair goes, was the last Fantasy Fair where I met Mobius, Jean Girard, and he blew my mind. A couple of conventions earlier, I'd gone through a line and tired out Bill Sienkiewicz, was probably why he won't come on our show, because I went through his line several times and
came back with several helpings.
I took my whole stack of Electras.
Okay,
I took my whole stack of New Mutants.
Yeah.
I took my he was glad. I didn't get a chance to get him to sign my damn Straight Toasters. I don't think Straight Toasters was even out back then.
Yeah, that would have been 89. And if you're talking those Electras, that's 87.
Yeah. So man. But he was awesome. He did this poster with Craig Hamilton. Oh. That was a combination of Craig Hamilton's work and his work at the same time. It was like Elektra facing off against a demon, and he did the demon, Elektra, and Craig did the Elektra. It was really nice, man. So, but man, I was doing research online trying to find more images for us to go through, man, and I couldn't find enough to really go to shake a stick at, man. It's kind of sad how Fantasy Fair has kind of faded away into nothingness in that regard.
Yeah.
It makes me want to go downstairs in the garage and pull out some stuff and put some stuff online and say, hey, this happened, correlate
I think
this,
you
correlate
should.
this.
Yes.
Yeah. Because one of the standouts, Adrian, that even DragonCon hasn't duplicated yet, and they probably never will, is it did a really good what do you call it, catalog called Visions. Remember that, Swain?
Oh yeah. It was almost like a comic magazine in a way.
And they had introduced the artist, Atlanta artist. I don't know if he was from Atlanta or not, but I met him at a table named Rod Wiggum.
Yeah, Rod Wiggum. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He did a series called Light Runner, which was gorgeous inside of it, dude. It's gorgeous, man. He did that, man. Then he went on to do stuff for Marvel.
Yes.
And I met Matthew Broderick there too, dude. Not Matthew Broderick.
I was about to say
Pat Broderick.
I was going to say
Pat Broderick. Ferris was there.
Right? Bueller. No, I met Pat Broderick there, man. And Pat Broderick was doing he did this. He was doing Micronauts at the time, dude.
Yeah.
He did this really great painting of Thor swinging his hammer real fast. Oof, gorgeous. I'm talking about painting, acrylic, nice, not digital. I'm not downing digital, but there's something to that surface magic and texture that you feel with paintings that you can't get anywhere else. Still, Yeah, Sway. What about you, Sway? What'd you see there?
Well, my first show wasn't the Fantasy Fair. My first show was it was probably some kind of Atlanta comic convention.
Okay.
I heard it on the radio.
Right.
Being advertised on the radio.
That's
and I was like, what?
Right.
And then and I remember asking my father to take me and a buddy. Mm-hmm. And it was held in like a hotel and basement of a hotel.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was probably maybe $3 or $5 to get in. It wasn't much.
Wow, that's nice.
And I think I had $20 to spend while I was there. And and I didn't know anything about what was going on other than comics and the people who make the comics are going to be there. So it's just like, wow, okay,
right,
all right. And then when I got there, part of the money, the $20 was for me to eat lunch. Of course, I didn't eat lunch. I spent all the money on buying comics and other things like that. And I remember walking in, and it wasn't a big room, but there were comics and long boxes lined up. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh man, all of the comic books are here. And this was at a time when, I mean, it still is this way when you go to conventions, but, true collectors are probably not going to go to a convention to buy Fantastic Four #6 or Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man number whatever. Mm-hmm. They're not really going there for that. Maybe they are if they've contacted somebody online, but nobody's just walking up and deciding to spend $12,000 on a rare collector's item like that.
Right.
But this was the era where you would have that, all up on the boards, and you'd see all the old. I had the reprints of the Fantastic Four. I didn't have the originals, of course. Mm-hmm. And so you see these, and and they're in Mylars, and I mean it's like and I remember Bob Mccloud was there.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So this might have been, like I said, 79 or 80, because he was on New Mutants before Sienkiewicz got on it, correct?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. He started New Mutants.
So he was, and I think he did he do the costume designs, or did Cockrum do them?
No, Mccloud did.
Okay, okay. So he was there, and I don't think I got a sketch, because I think I would have, like Dee said, I would have had to have blown like 10 or 12 or 15 bucks.
Right.
To get a sketch, but he was definitely sketching, and they were that inexpensive. They were pretty affordable, but it was pretty transformative experiences. I mean, we were running around and going back and forth, and we'd buy comics, and then we'd go out in the lobby and sit, on the floor and read, and then we go back in and get more, and then we come back out and read, and and then all of us, and that's probably when the whole idea for me of making a list of things that I wanted to get there that I couldn't find at the local comic shop.
Right.
It's like, okay, let me see if they'll have it at a comic convention, and and keeping a want list in my pocket, and that's probably going on, up until modern day. But then after that, it was. Yeah, back issues. Yeah, digging in the bins. Although back then it wasn't really digging in the bins. It was just, just going for yours. You know what I mean? Now it's kind of like crate digging. It's, looking in the past for something. But it really wasn't that much in the past back then. This was, probably peak, front peak fandom, organized fandom. But after that, it was definitely like Atlanta Fantasy Fair, and like you said, Susan Barrows as a cosplayer, and a lot of the fantasy artists, which I didn't have a lot of interest in other than like Boris and Rowena and Frazetta, although Frazetta never came out that I'm aware of. But I do remember like Dave Dorman being at those shows.
Yeah. This one Dave was starting off, man.
Yeah,
Woo,
yeah. He was still incredible even then.
Yeah.
I remember Tim Bradstreet being there, but he was still kind of doing more like the vampire gaming art. He hadn't really moved into comics proper, and this is way before his Punisher covers and Hellblazer and all of that stuff. And Ted Boone-Thanacket was there.
Micra.
Yeah.
Micra.
Yeah. Ted was there, and then after that, it probably is when it got to maybe like going to a HeroesCon and certainly Dragon Con before that. But for everyone who's listening, part of the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is because we're living in COVID times, and even though vaccinations are available and people are getting inoculated and things are starting to turn a corner for us, hopefully. Everybody's still stuck at home and having to avoid large gatherings and crowds. So, there hasn't been an attendance at an organized major convention here in the United States in over a year. It's been an entire year. And so maybe at the end of 2021, we might see some of that lift or shift. But this conversation was inspired, I believe it was our friend Kathy Fenner posted an image in a Jeffrey Jones Facebook group. And it was the poster, the promotional art that was created by the artist who attended the 1994 Dragon Con here in Atlanta. And did we figure out, Adrian, did Walt do this drawing and everybody painted on top of it, or did Jeff do the drawing?
No, I think it was Simonson who did the underdrawing and everyone else painted over it their particular, it wasn't quadrants, it was divided into 6 pieces, so whatever, 6/10 or whatever that is. But yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, so she posted the image of that, and apparently, as Adrian, I think he's correct, is that Simonson did a dragon, the underdrawing for a dragon, and then a bunch of painterly artists painted 6 different sections of the dragon. And and if that sounds like a chimera, it's not. It was beautiful. It was great. And at that particular show, it was 1994, so it was a year after I got married. Jeff Jones was there, Walt Simonson was there, John J. Muth was there, George Pratt was there, Dave McKean was there.
All the Water Boys, they're hitting it.
Yeah. And I think Kent Williams was there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Kent was there.
Yeah. And so Dwight and I attended that show with our friend Don and a friend of his, Danielle Dooney.
Yep, Dooney. Yeah.
And my wife was there with me, and I remember I don't recall meeting Jeff because the line was super long, and it may not even been that the line was long. I think he was just talking to somebody. You can tell somebody's in a conversation with someone and they're really having a conversation.
Right.
So I didn't want to go over until she was free.
Right.
Or he at the time. But I did meet George Pratt.
Right.
And I got him to sign some of my comics.
Enemy A show? Get it?
It wasn't Enemy Ace. Okay. He signed like some Batman covers that he did from Detective Comics. Yeah, I think he signed some of those. Right. And I remember he was sitting there and he had his sleeves rolled up and he had these his glasses on. And at the time, he's a much younger guy, so he had this black long black hair, and this black beard. Yeah. But he was super nice.
Always nice.
As always, exactly.
And affable. Yeah, and just everything that you would want your artistic heroes to be. And then I remember at some point later in the day is when I connected back up with Dwight, because we didn't come together, but we met up there and then kind of separated, went our separate ways. Right. And then we got back together later on, and then tell the story, man, about when you met Jeff, yo.
So this is a secret, kids. Don't wait for the tables. Wait till you leave the table so you can accost them. No, don't do that.
Accost them. Dang, you had him damn up. Give me this.
Right. But no, what it was is apparently
break yourself, Jeff Jones.
And he kind of did afterwards, but no. But no, man, so it was me and Danielle, which we call Dooney. We were walking down, I guess, one of the side halls and going to the restroom, in that restroom area. And lo and behold, there was Jeff Jones walking down, coming towards us. I was like, oh shit, that's Jeff Jones. And Diane was like, Diane knew who he was, because come on, he's a fantastic painter, He hung out with Don enough to know Don. Don gives everybody the 4-1 on Skinny, who the great artists are. That's what Don always does.
Of course.
So I went there, and I said, I had my little shitty portfolio, in my hand. I was like, can you take a look at my portfolio? And he graciously is like, I'm headed back to my table, but when you find something you have confidence in, because I was a little skittish. When you find something you have confidence in, here's my street address. He gave me his street address in New York City, dog.
Yeah.
And a little card. And I was floored by that, man. And of course, we did the obligatory, at the time, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. We're not worthy.
Wayne's
We're
World.
not worthy.
Yeah.
And he's a really nice guy, man. He's a little shy, and probably strange for these guys to pull up on him, the way we did, and recognize him outside of his area, because I don't think he made a lot of appearances at cons, at least at that time. Maybe I'm not so sure. Besides studio, or whatever. But yeah, man, it was a fantastic experience, man. I'll never forget that, man. First of my life, how just meeting somebody of that magnitude and have them be so gracious, and he didn't like shut me down. He wasn't like, oh, kid, get out of here, bother me, which he could have done, He said, looked at my stuff real quick, and he said, well, and I said, I was doing the thing you never do as an artist. Don't apologize for your shit. Either your shit's ready to go or it's not ready to go. And he was like, well, you have something that you feel comfortable with, and you want to show me, then contact me, And of course, I never did, not in time. So that's the way things go. But man, that was one of the many great experiences. But that was probably one of the greatest experiences of my young life, man, artistically.
Yeah.
I was just gonna piggyback off of that, D, and say, Jones giving you his street address, and you read other stories of other people's experiences with comic artists and painters back then at those conventions, and how much it was an experience to be one-on-one with them, as opposed to, and I'll go ahead and make the correlation, as opposed to today, after that superstar period of like the late 80s and definitely the early 90s, Image and all that, where they're much more standoffish, where they really would say, go away, you bother me. What?
Right.
What? Right. I'm a megastar. I've sold millions of comics. Why are you talking to me like that? You know what I'm saying? And you just don't get that same experience like I've read from like past convention goers, where people will relate, well, man, I had a great conversation with Jim Starlin or whomever it was, and there was much more of a one-to-one relationship between the fan and the creator back then, and I think overall those conventions, from what I can gather and what I've seen as far as like, archival pictures and footage, you see like the fans really and the creators really embracing each other, oftentimes literally, just in terms of like, man, just arms around each other, just buddies, you know what I'm saying? And that's just great. And that's just something that I feel, it's not that it's needed today, because it's a different world, in many ways, not just presently, but just different overall. So I don't expect that type of thing to come back. But at the same time, it seemed like creators back then really, because comics and fantasy were such a niche, that the audience and the creators that did them were so small that they had no choice but to be intertwined. Whereas now it's such a big business that the chasm between them is almost encouraged, where we're supposed to put them on a pedestal. And they're untouchable. I can't even approach them, even if I see them in person, that type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
To your point, Adrian, you're exactly right, because you're looking at the fact that it was a niche industry, and they were grateful to find the fans that were there and respond to them. And think about it, man. I doubt very seriously, maybe 10 years hence, after that, if I met Jeff Jones at that time, he would give me his card with his street address on it. So I'll be able to Google that shit and find out where he lives.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not safe anymore. I mean, it's like the level of the barriers between being able to approach somebody are a lot more evident, because you have this immediate access to people's information almost at the drop of a dime.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was going to say too is, and some of that is real, what Adrian is pointing out. I think also some of that too is our feeling about them is as fans and as people on the outside. So, for instance, it's like if you see someone who's on a television show every week, and you see them in public, and you start to feel weird around them. Well, it's because they're in your life, but you're not in their life, and you're aware of that difference in your relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
They seem familiar to you, but you're all of a sudden glaringly aware that you're not familiar to them.
Right.
and yet you want to speak to them as if, you know, they're your friend or your homie or what have you.
Right.
But yeah, I think the other part of it too is what you're discussing now, where, you know, back in the 70s and, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even maybe part of the early 90s, you know, you were alone in a room at your word processor or at your computer or at your typewriter or at your drawing board or at your easel, painting, creating, writing by yourself.
Isolated, yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, so you didn't have any sense of the fandom and the interest in your work other than when someone would share letters with you or if someone corresponded. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in today's world, people can tweet at you, you follow you on Instagram and on social media and send you direct messages and make requests for commissions. Now it really is a bigger thing. So the idea of giving someone your street address was the equivalent of them saying, oh, he's or she is at blank.com. That's where I send the note to, or that's who I reach out to, or this is their art agent or whatever. So now that's the avenue you'd go through. But really, it was just a different world. It was just slower communication than it is now. And you heard stories of Alex Toth corresponding with people.
Yes, man.
I think I've heard stories of Will Eisner corresponding with people back in the day, and I'm sure that was probably a lot more common than we even know. As far as that's concerned. But,
sure. Glory days.
Anyway,
glory days.
yeah, really and truly. I remember a time going to a Heroes convention, and this was this was probably about 95, 96.
Okay.
And Don was working in comics at the time, or maybe right on the cusp of getting in. But he was friendly with the Gaijin guys, and he introduced me to the Gaijin guys, and I'd gone by their studio a couple times.
Yes,
and I remember going to,
Yes, go ahead. Tell us
Good. And I remember going by their studio, and so they were saying they were going to be at a convention in Charlotte, called HeroesCon. So it's like, oh, okay. And then Don was like, it's like 3 hours away. So I think we all kind of drove up there, and so they're all set up. And I distinctly remember two things. One, this was the weekend right around the time that Kurt Cobain had killed himself.
Oh.
So, and this is the early 90s, so this is the era of, alt rock and grunge and all of that. And he had killed himself. And I remember Joe, our friend Joe Phillips, who's from Atlanta, who was a member of Gaijin. Joe apparently didn't like Kurt Cobain and was making fun of him.
Oh, man.
Oh, shit.
And he was singing Beck's song, "I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me?"
Damn, Joe. Wow.
And I remember like, wow, okay.
It's a abrasive, right? Yeah.
But the other thing that I remember about this show was this was it was a different kind of show because more comics focused than the Atlanta Fantasy Fair was, back in the 80s. And also I remember at that particular convention, Joe Kubert was there along with his two sons, Andy and Adam. And one of the two sons had his son there. And his son was, 6 or 7 years, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. He's running around and he's drawing. He's sitting at an artist alley drawing next to his, his granddad and his uncle and his dad. And I remember hanging out and talking with Cully and the Gaijin guys. And I remember Cully said, okay, if your grandfather's a comic artist, your dad is a comic artist, and your uncle is a comic artist, what else can you really be? And I remember thinking, and not only is your granddad a great comic artist, he might be one of the fucking greatest.
Yeah. Well, the quintessential best
comic artist.
Ever do it. Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But I think the thing that I remembered was getting Joe Kubert to sign some stuff, and I think I might have had some sample pages I had done that were Kubert-esque. And I remember him being very gracious and kind, like Dee described with Jeff Jones, and saying, "Hey, look, I'm flattered that you find anything, worthwhile in my work, but definitely, start trying to find your own, your own style and, your own way of doing things. Maybe use me as an inspiration, but, try to find your own path, because, imitation is flattery, but, it's to get you somewhere." And he may have even said something about being inspired by,
other artists,
other artists that preceded him. Right. I'm trying to think of some of the names now, but Hal Foster maybe, or something like that, Prince Valiant or something like that. That might have been an inspiration to him. Yeah. But yeah, I remember him being really nice, and that was probably my first Heroes convention. So maybe 95, 96, something like that, mid 90s, I guess it was.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of Heroes, like, man, to me, Heroes, that's like the first convention that I went to, obviously, and for myself, that's the only one for me. I know you got San Diego, Baltimore, New York, where have you, Orlando, MegaCon, whatever, but Heroes, that's it for me. That's it.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? And just so much stuff has happened there for me, just in terms of, and it's always come at a point to where it's that time of year, just after winter or whatnot, where I feel like my comics love is at a low ebb, you know what I'm saying? Or my art, my creativity is just like, man, whatever. Yeah. And so, I'll get my stuff ready and head up to Charlotte. And after them 3 days, I'm energized, like, full of atomic batteries of power, ready to draw all the comics of the world, ready to get all the comics.
It'll do that to you, man. It'll do that to you, man. I gotta tell you, man, a thing that happened to me, man, a long time ago, one of the comics conventions, going back to the Fantasy Fair again, was I met two people that kind of changed my world as far as comics goes, man, and from a local perspective, that made me think I could do this shit. And one was Joe Phillips, man, because Joe was organizing this shit, dude. Joe had multiple series that he was trying to put out, and it was I forget the name. That was what was the name? Wasn't continuity, because that was already taken care of, but it was something interesting, something that grabbed you, and he had done it. And our mutual friend Mike Daly was actually doing some stuff with Joe. I think you might have been too, Swizz. I think you might have been too. I'm pointing at you.
Yeah.
And and it was kind of cool, man, to the point to where Swizz and Mike had gotten such notoriety inside the comics game, possibly through Joe, to where they actually did a little story inside of one of the visions.
Oh, really?
But it was a smaller pamphlet. Yeah, so it's a really good rendition of two or three characters fighting this other character, and doing the villain versus superhero thing, and that changed my world. I was like, damn, okay, they did that. Okay, let me dig into my shit, and then on top of that, seeing Brian Stelfreeze on Cyclops, one of his first published works, man. That Cyclops picture he did, like with the girl with the fans, and it was a standard Stelfreeze, standard Stelfreeze, kind of Nagel-esh, but like three colors is all I put into it. It was pink and blue and white. Gorgeous, dude. Absolutely gorgeous stuff, dude. And it blew me the fuck away, And I was like, wow, man, this is attainable. This is heaven, I love this. And like you said, Adrian, Fantasy Fair was my entry point, and I do miss it, man. Based on just some of the things that I think I love Dragon Con equally now, but Dragon Con it turned into a miniature San Diego, and it's just too much for me to absorb in one particular outing. And to say that, but Fantasy Fair had his veins out too. Like I fell deeper in love with anime. Back then it was colloquially called in a kind of somewhat not PC manner, Japanese animation, Japanimation.
Yeah.
But I fell deeper in love with that, and I actually sat in rooms with people watching like not released American VHS tapes. Yeah,
For people who are too young to remember that, now everything is available online. Everything is streaming.
Yeah.
You can order it and have it shipped to your door if you want to get it on physical media. But, back then, and I remember like Dexter and Rico and other friends of ours, who were watching anime from overseas, and you just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't being broadcast anywhere. Some of it was R-rated and X-rated, so you couldn't see it. So you would only be able to see it on VHS or Beta, or eventually on disc. And so you go to conventions, and they would have rooms that were panels during the day where they'd have panels and moderators and things going on, and then in the evening, they would play episodes and episodes of an anime or episodes of that Amazing Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s, or they would play the Marvel superheroes, and you could sit in a room and watch them
the entire
because
day.
If they weren't being broadcasted, you couldn't. That was it. That was your only opportunity, and that was interesting to me. As far as Adrian, I know you came into it later. Dwight and I more as teenagers, but I'm trying to think at what point. Putting the art aside, just as fans of something, as rabid, intense fans of something, was it right away that you all got a sense of community and togetherness, and the idea of organized fandom?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. It was weird. I felt I immediately felt home when everybody was there, dude. Any artist was carrying a portfolio with. I mean, I was standing in front of them and back of them, and we all knew what we were doing. We all had a sense of camaraderie. We were all trying to see each other go through and give each other tips and promote things. I walked around the whole day with Mike Daly's portfolio, dude, and it was humbling, dude, because Mike was a bad as fuck back in the day, dude. That dude was on the cusp of doing some shit, dude. But man, it was a great time for camaraderie, dude. We met Antonio Cade there, I met some dudes there called.
I'd actually met Antonio before that, but
okay,
I remember that. Yeah,
okay. I met quite a few people, man, that I ended up working with in different ways. It's weird things, man. When Craig Hamilton, a local, first came onto the sales floor of a comic convention, you were there, Swizz, because you were about to start attending the Art Institute of Atlanta, and I think he was maybe a year before you, something along those lines. And he comes up, and his writer at the time on one of his books was announcing Craig Hamilton as the greatest artist in here. Yeah, it was kind of what the fuck, dude? Calm down.
Was this before Aquaman?
This was before Aquaman. Yeah.
Okay.
Aquaman. And he's like, I think anybody want to challenge him? It's like, and thing was Craig. if you know Craig Hamilton, Craig's one of the most genteel, affable guys out there. He wasn't hearing any of that shit. It's like, man, you just calm down, dude. The writer had all the mouth, dude. That's like some kind of paperboy on the city streets of the 1940s and shit. Come here. Hear ya. This is exactly like, dude. Calm down, dude. And I was not the least bit intimidated. I was like, his stuff was really, really good. But I was like, dude, who is this guy? Will you shut him the fuck up? He's like making me not want to come to your table right now. And but at the same time, people came over to see what he was doing, and it kind of helped to some degree. He was drawing attention to him, and that's what he wanted to do. So, it was good. A lot of myriad stories like that, dude. I can come to mind now as we talk about it. Strange stuff, dude. I cosplayers and man babies and
Did Frank Robbins draw that? Bad baby.
When I say it's like,
Hey, I was going to mention about community. That's how I feel every time I went to HeroesCon every single year. You might have a hard travel to get up there, as we did one year. The three of us riding in Swizz's truck and the misadventures therein.
Yeah.
But once we finally got there, it was like, And when I've gone by myself and I've entered that convention center, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? And just the feeling amongst other convention goers that you might meet. You might only see them just that day, just that 15 minutes that you're waiting in line or beside you when you're going through the back issue binge. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you just feel like family for just that time, And you know, I've had a couple of really, really great experiences meeting people for the first time there. Like the artist, independent artist Michelle Fife, who draws Copra, his own creator, own book, amongst many other things. You know, I met him for the first time at a HeroesCon. You know, and it was like for 2 or 3 years prior to that, he had been a listener to our show, our previous incarnation, and then he and I started hitting it off on a personal level and interacting back and forth. And man, it's so funny. It's like, you remember in Die Hard, where after all of that, you know, Officer Powell finally sees John McClane, and he knows it's John. He don't even have to say, he don't even have to mouth the words of like, McClane? Right. No, he knows it's him, like through all the activity, people walking every day. That's kind of how it was when I saw Michelle.
That's awesome.
I was walking towards Artist Alley, and I saw him, and it was just like, it was almost like that same thing. Convention goers walking back and forth, but between them, I could see him, and I came up to him, and we actually knew who each other was. Like, yo, man, Adrian? Michelle? Ah! You can have like that. Right. That Michael Kamen score rise up like a Die Hard.
I love that, man.
And that's how it is every year when I would see him at HeroesCon, man. You know, and it's like that for a great number of people. I only see them there once a year, you know, and another great experience I had as far as that community is at HeroesCon. I don't know about other cons. That was one of the few cons where you could see a lot of the golden age creators every year. You know what I'm saying? And like people would just kind of walk past them. It's like, don't you know who this is? This is Marty Nobel, man. Right, he created Green Lantern. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Or man,
look, I remember talking. I mean, I remember talking. Sitting down and talking with Marty Nodell and his wife, and we were talking about, you know, old comics from the 40s and whatnot. And I remember I dropped a few nuggets, yo. And his wife said, "Well, you certainly know your golden age." And I was like, "God damn right,
yes,
right." I'm not new to this. I am true to this.
Exactly, man. And they appreciated that. I'm telling you, like I was
yeah, man.
And this is actually one of the few times at a convention where I teared up. You know what I'm saying? I finally got up the courage, the fortitude to approach Nick Cardy. Okay, I had been going to HeroesCon for about a couple years at this point, and he was there at every single one. You know, and I finally said, you know, this year gonna be the year, man. I need to make sure I talk with him, man, because I had really gotten into his work. And so I went up to him, and I had never had this experience. Like I took out an issue of Alter Ego, the magazine that was dedicated to him, and my hand was shaking, man. Like I was like, Mr. Cardy, and I'm a grown ass man at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I was still doesn't
matter.
Yeah, I was like, man, Mr. Cardy, I'm such a huge fan of your work. You know, I just really appreciate everything that you've done for comics, and I just love your stuff so much. And you know, in his way, his own very friendly way, he was like, "Oh, well, thank you, young man. Thank you so much." And I was like, "Oh, but could you sign this for me?" You know what I'm saying? and he signed it. He signed it across the bottom. Yeah. And that was so wonderful. Another story that I'm thinking of before I jump off here. Basil Gogos, the world famous fantasy artist. Okay.
Yes, man.
I don't think y'all even know this. I don't even think I've even related this to you guys.
Okay.
I hosted a panel with Bill Sienkiewicz, Bo Hampton, and Basil Gogos at Heroes one year. And
I remember that. And
my friend Greg Matyasevich, he was hosting the panel, and I was kind of like the moderator for it. You know, he was able to hook everything up. And so in the panel went great. You know what I'm saying? We had to kind of help Basil along a bit, you know, because he definitely was up in age at that point. But, you know, we had to kind of help him along in terms of answering the questions, kind of prompting and whatnot. And so after the panel was done, he and his wife wanted to go get lunch, and the main guy, the main organizer that was coming through and just making sure everything was running smoothly, Andy, he said, would someone be willing to escort, Basil and his wife, to go get some lunch whatnot? And I said, hey, I will. I'll do it. No problem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So went and we walked to Starbucks, and it's so funny that in your mind, you're always expecting your artistic heroes to be like 10 feet tall, broad-chested, and just, But here's this man, barely 5 feet.
Very slight.
Very 5 feet, fragile even. And I'm escorting him through the crowd at Heroes, and he's holding on to my arm in arm, so he doesn't lose me, so I don't lose him.
That's nice, man.
And we head over to Starbucks. He and his wife sit down. They get like a little croissant or something and some coffee. And he's talking to me, and he said, "Well, do you draw, young man?" I said, "Yeah, I do a bit." And he hadn't seen any of my stuff, and I didn't volunteer to show him any of my stuff. But he was just like, "Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. You'll be fine." And after they were done, his wife said, "Well, I have to go back to the room. So are you able to take Basil back to the table, to the Vanguard booth?" I said, "Yeah, I know where that is. No problem. So we're walking back again, arm in arm, and he's just like patting my arm, just like, you're gonna do good. You seem like a very, very nice young man, And we're just I'm just escorting him through this legend, through the crowd of Heroes. And it's like, nobody knows who he is. You know what I'm saying? If he wasn't sitting at the table, no one would know who he was. It was just like, and it was so humbling just to have like this, like I said, just this legend, arm in arm, and I'm escorting him through this crowd here. And I finally got him back to the table, to the Vanguard table. I was like, well, it was very nice to sit with you, Mr. Go-Go's. He was like, no, Basil. I was like, oh, well, Basil, I appreciate that. And that's the last time I saw him. And then shortly after that, we all heard that he had passed away. But man,
right.
I tell you, that was
a nice story, man.
That was something else, man. It really was.
He look, you talking about people not knowing who he was, but what they did know is who is that fly 80-year-old silver fox with the ascot on or the scarf under his neck? Because he would wear the scarf. He was very old school, classy in that way.
Right. An ascot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just very, very stylish.
Right.
But, and Dee and I actually had a similar occasion when we got a chance to pull Bernie Wrightson away from his table.
Yes,
and found like a quiet spot
in
the lobby and got to sit with him and talk with him and interviewed him for the podcast. But as it relates to community, for me, one of the things that, talking about some of the bigger shows like Dragon Con and the New York Comic Con, which I was able to attend, and C2E2 and places like that. One of the things that I appreciated about a show like Dragon Con was it showed the community of, like comic fans could come together, but it showed the overlap of all the other people who are interested in the things that are similar to what we're interested in. People who are interested in costuming and figurines and jewelry and collecting swords and weapons.
Artisans and creative types of all different kinds,
Yeah. So seeing all of that stuff, even though I don't personally have a ton of interest in it, but being able to see that those folks have just as fervent an interest in that as I have in comics and in art making and all of that, I think that was really big for me, because it was like, okay, this is my immediate family, but this is my extended family, so to speak. These are my distant cousins and uncles and aunts and whatnot that I only get to see once a year, but we are still a part of the same family. And for me, it gave me a certain respect for not respect, but a certain appreciation, for those other areas of geekiness and nerdiness that I probably wouldn't have before if I were only keeping my head down and only, interested in what I was interested in, and that's it. And that as a way of looking at life is, it's probably happened to me multiple times. It's like, once I looked up, I realized, there was more going on than just what I was interested in. But yeah, that's very true. And I mean, you just get so many opportunities. I remember when Dwight and I we hosted a panel similar to Adrian's experience with Basil. We hosted a panel with Bob Schreck.
Yes, man.
And Dick Giordano.
Yes, man.
And the panel was called Legends of the DC Universe.
Yeah.
And and it was a very small group. It was an early panel, like 10 o'clock in the morning. Right. So it was only maybe about eight other people, other than me, Bob, Dick, and Dwight. So we said, well, let's just do it in the round. We just, come down off the stage. We just sat down in the round and just chatted it up. And I remember when we had become a little friendly with Shrek at the time. I think. I don't think that was the first time we met him. Maybe it was. I'm not sure. But but before the panel started, Bob said, look, before we get started, he says, the name of this panel is Legends of the DC Universe. And he said, Dick Giordano is a legend of the DC Universe. This is a legend of the DC Universe. And I was just really moved, by, him wanting to make sure, that proper respect and homage was paid to Dick Giordano. And of course, we recorded the panel and we posted it on the previous version of SiDEBAR.
Yeah.
And then, like with Basil Gogos, maybe a year, maybe not even quite a year. It was shortly after that, not too long after that Dick Giordano passed away. And I remember being really grateful, to have that opportunity. One, because Dwight was with me, and we were longtime friends, and longtime comic fans, and novice artists, and wanting to do this, and Dick Giordano. I mean, I've just read so many of his comics.
Are you kidding me?
I
mean, he's synonymous with comics, dude. It just is. He just is, dude. I mean, everything DC, man. Batman, Superman. I mean, Wonder
Green
Woman.
Lantern. Come on now, everything.
Inking Neil Adams on Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Yes, man.
And I knew enough. When I was a teen and a younger person reading comics, I knew that Dick Giordano was an artist, but he was also an editor. Yeah. He was the editor-in-chief. So that was one of the few occasions, other than like Quesada Now, or I can't even think of another one off the top of my head, where an artist was actually, an editor-in-chief. An artist was in control of the editorial direction.
Like Carmine Infantino or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I was very aware of that, and Glaring Repair, and he was very sweet and very kind, and I remember he made a reference in the conversation to something coming across the transom, and I was like, what is a transom? And obviously that's something that goes back to publishing and to journalism or whatever. Way back in the day. I don't even know if they would use something like that now, or would even make a reference to it. But I remember he mentioned that, and he was very kind. And when he passed away, I remember Bob Layton being real broke up about it, because that was Bob was like a mentee. Dick was like his mentor. It was like the guard before him that that helped him along in his way. So
can I relate one other story? And it was thanks to you. Exclusively Swizz. We all went to the DragonCon 2010 because we hosted some panels down there, and that was a year that Darwin Cook was there at DragonCon. All right. Now at the time, Darwin Cook was hot.
Yeah, white hot, yo.
Just mega hot. Parker, I think Parker, maybe the first book had just come out, but hot.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was just nuts for Darwin Cook in every way possible, and so we're down there, and I think Swizz, is this was after you had already talked to him for the Toth tribute, right? Or were you trying to talk to him then, or?
It was after the Toth tribute.
Well, I can't remember if I had recorded it with him yet. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It may have been after. It may have been after.
I think that's what it was, because that was kind of your entree. Because I remember seeing you go over to him, and I wanted to as well, but I was shy. I was like, man, I'm just gonna hang back for a minute. So I hung back too long, and Swain tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, bruh, he about to leave. Darwin about to leave. I was like, oh shit! So I hustled on over there. I was like, excuse me, Mr. Cook, I'm a huge fan of your work. Man, I just love your stuff so much. Like the same kind of script I have every time I meet one of my guys. He was like, and he's kind of not super gruff, but he's to the point like, oh, I appreciate that. Right. And he was trying to pack up.
Slam Bradley, Slam Bradley.
And I was like, yeah, I just want to let you know that I appreciate your stuff, man. Slam. But yeah, and Swain was actually able to get a picture of us together, me and Darwin. And I need to post that, because it was just like, man, that's like, me and Darwin, you know what I'm saying? And it was like, it was great. It was wonderful, and there's things like that just cannot be replicated. They really can't. Just having even that briefest interaction with an artist. There's one more artist that I'll mention that I had interaction with who never makes convention appearances here in the States. It's an artist named Dave Cooper. He's a painter, a Canadian painter, and he paints like paintings of, let's say, plus-sized women in compromising situations, but it's done in this playful manner. I've always loved this stuff. I have several books of his. I'm a huge fan. And he came
Cooper's
to
Kuper, right?
No, not Cooper. Cooper, like hang with Mr. Cooper.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave Cooper.
Okay.
Man, I had all my stuff with me. I think I had. I heard he was going to be there. I was like, okay, I'm going to grab this weasel. I'm going to grab this overbite. I'm going to grab this and that. And I think I only took 2 things, though, because I didn't want to overwhelm him. And so he was sitting at the table. I came up to him, and he likes to say online, he signs off everything, your pal, Dave. I was like,
nice.
And I felt comfortable just going up to him, not my usual script, just saying, hey, Dave, how you doing? He's like, hey, how are you? Just like he knew me already. He's like, man, man, Dave, I'm a huge fan of your work, man. I just really think that you are fantastic. He was like, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then he engaged me. He's like, well, where are you from? I said, I'm from Atlanta. He's like, oh yeah, okay, Atlanta. There's a group that I love that's from Atlanta called Mastodon. And I was vaguely familiar with that. I'd heard that before. It's like this punk group or something like that called Mastodon. He was like, yeah, they're from Atlanta, right? I was like, yeah, I believe so. So we talked for a few minutes just generally about Atlanta and everything. He was like, well, man, I've never really been out this way, He was like, tell the truth, I don't really come out this way, period, to the south of at night. I was like, well, I'm glad you're here, man, because, you are a highlight that really made me come this year. When I saw your name on the guest list, I knew I had to make a beeline to meet you. So if you don't mind, I got a couple books here. If you could sign them, he's like, yeah, sure, of course. And so he signed it. He's like, what's your name? Adrian. He's like, okay. I said, Adrian, your pal Dave. He did a little drawing in it. I was like,
Yeah.
About my 30-year-old ass. Said,
That's all it takes, man. That's all it takes, man.
I think Heroes had did like an exclusive cover for Adventure Time. He did a variant cover for an Adventure Time comic, that cartoon. He did a painted version of it or a drawing or something like that. And so he signed a copy of that for me too. Your pal Dave to Adrian. And I was just like, man, that's awesome. I was cloud 9 after. And before I left, I was like, Dave, man, thank you so much. You're awesome. You're fantastic, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. So I appreciate that, Adrian. All right, I'll see you around then. And that was that. But you can't replace that interaction. You can't. And it just goes to show you even in advanced age, like I still had the reaction like I would have when I was like 16 or something. You know, just like, this creative force right here, you know, just it's just awesome, man. That's all.
Let me tell you one of my favorite moments, man. This is the last one I'm going to say. I went to San Francisco to see Kraftwerk. Me and my buddy Bernard and his wife went to San Francisco. And
was this in 2005?
Yes. Was this?
No. This wasn't. This is.
You know we gotta give the preamble, yo. You know we gotta give it. Coming to the stage, the up-teeth retelling of this story. It's
right.
No,
look,
we're not taking your
every
shot,
time
man.
he retells it, it gets better and better.
Exactly,
You're like,
damn. Go ahead.
And then I levitated. What?
No, this wasn't the concert.org thing I went to. This was pre-concert.org. This is the first time I went to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I went there to see Kraftwerk, and it turns out my buddies they wanted to do other things in San Francisco. They were going back early, and going back to Colorado early, and I stayed for about a day later, and so I went to San Francisco Comic Con. I forget what it was called at the time. I went to San Francisco.
No, WonderCon.
WonderCon, right? And man, you talk about a menagerie of interests and people that were there, and I met all kinds of individuals that were there, man. I met my boy Jason Felix for the first time there, man. Who's incredible, dude. I met some other nice things which I wasn't expecting to meet there as well. Why not? Who cares? We're all adults here. I met Adrian on stage there, and we took a pic together. There were all kinds of coalescing and different kinds of activities, like Swain was saying, of just geekdom, that were there. And one person I met there was one of the original studio mates, and I was there, and I said, okay, you know what? Let me dial this phone number, and hey Swain, what's up, man? I said, I got Mike Kaluta here. You'd like to talk to Mike Kaluta? I give the phone to Swain, and he talked. But did I give you the phone, Swain? Did you talk to him? You talked to him? Did you speak to the speakerphone to him? I forgot how it was. I forgot how it went down.
I can't remember the details. I just remember you doing that though. And speaking to him. Yeah.
And I got him a sketch from Mike Kaluta there, man. And it was a great thing, man. To hear Swain's reaction, and to get Mike Kaluta, who I knew was always one. And I took a picture of him, man. He did that raised eyebrow thing he always does.
Yeah.
Yes, yo. It was fantastic, man. He was such a nice guy, man. Such a nice guy, man. And like you said, being one of the forebears of that era of illustration, people overlook him looking for the more shiny object, and people were not. There were people standing in line to get to him too. Though, don't get me wrong. I mean, his fans follow him to where he is. So he had fans in that area that came to see him. But there was so many young people just passing over this great magistrate of pen and ink, man, and painting. And I'm like, fuck, So I had to do my due, man, and due diligence, and go and introduce myself and say hi to him. And what a great conversation, man! What a great conversationalist this guy was. So
yeah, it's funny because the other thing about conventions, and really what we're talking about is making connections, and connecting the dots, and in some ways closing loops that have been open for years in terms of our interactions with other people via their work, or our interactions, eventually online with others. And so one of the things that's really great about conventions is the opportunity to not just meet with creators, but also to meet up with like other fans, other people. Like, Fife, you and Fife became friends, Adrian, before you all actually met in person. And it happened quite a bit, but at shows, that's kind of the one opportunity. Like I met Mark Chiarello at C2E2 for the very first time, in person, and we became friends after that. Meeting, once we, Dwight and I started podcasting, and then eventually Adrian joined the show. meeting other podcasters at shows like Wood and the guys at 11 O'Clock Comics, or the Geek Speak guys, or meeting John Suntrist at C2E2. And also, I was thinking, as it relates to Kaluta, like, us attending the very first Spectrum Fantastic Art Live in 2012.
Yes, man.
And getting a chance to meet a lot of the painters and a lot of the the artists that we had talked to. We met Kathy and Arnie Finner, who we had on the show, and who Dwight was turned me on to the Spectrum annuals in a big way. We met, as it relates to Kaluta, we met Christina Carroll at that show, and she's the person who put us in touch with Mike Kaluta when we had Mike Kaluta as a guest.
Oh, really?
On the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Meeting Francis Vallejo in person, who we had interviewed. Meeting, George, or seeing George Pratt again.
Yeah.
Getting a chance to meet Phil Hale in person.
Yeah.
He's very
meeting
avuncular.
other artists. He was very avuncular. I remember he made some weird crack. It wasn't a crack. It's just he's kind of an oddball character.
Right.
So I remember him saying, I kind of imagine the shape of your head being different by the sound of your voice.
Okay. Phil.
What?
All right.
Right. But it's amazing.
All right.
He meant specifically about Swain. He looked at me and said, "No, I got you." What the hell does that mean?
Your head looks like how you sound, is what he's saying.
Like, damn, dog. Okay. Thanks a lot.
I threw him off, yo.
I got you, Phil. I got you. Payback.
I threw him off. But meeting like Forrest Rogers, who does the great, the dolls and the 3D art.
Say it again, bro.
Just tons of other people. Meeting Donato in person. Meeting our friend
Greg Manchester.
John Picasso in person.
Yeah.
Manchester. Meeting John Foster in person.
The great one. Don't forget the great one. Ian McKay.
Ian McKay.
McKay, yes.
He's like Wayne
Yes.
Gretzky, the great one.
Yeah.
Yes. He is the great one, yo.
That's a lifetime.
Meeting Mignola and getting a chance to hang out with some of the artists. I mentioned Donato.
Oh yeah,
JP Target. Also
meeting Ray Bonilla.
Dan DeSantos.
Yeah.
Dan DeSantos.
Dos
I'm trying to think of some others.
Ray Bonilla. Meeting him for the first time.
Ray Bonilla. That might be the greatest Spectrum experience of all time. Was, first of all, eating the barbecue.
Yes.
Eating the barbecue. The barbecue was just
Nothing like
God
it.
damn. And this is I'm from Chicago. There's some killer ass, fire ass barbecue joints in Chicago.
I'm sure.
Okay.
It's true.
Okay. Do not get it twisted. But that barbecue in Kansas City was the truth.
Peerless.
And also hanging out with Dustin Johnson, because Dustin was in the card ride.
That's right.
So, yeah, and I had actually met Dustin at the New York Comic Con with Ernesto Figueroa some years before. But we went and had barbecue, and we ate dinner together with Ray. And Ray Bonilla is a wonderful painter. I think he's based out of New York, maybe Buffalo. I can't remember. He's a wonderful painter and a teacher. And he's the guy that actually put us in touch with the late David Grove,
That's right.
who we had as a guest on the show. He was friends with Grove, and put it together for us. And so we ate barbecue, and then we were trying to get a cab back, and it was like the three of us, and then Dustin and Ray. And so we got in the cab, and he said, "Okay." We said we have to get two cabs. Only three of us can ride in the back, and we were like, we'll fit in. And so it's a cab, so you have to sit in the back seat. So all five of us are sitting in the back seat, crammed. Somewhere online there's a picture too. Yeah, crammed in like sardines in the back seat of this cab. And I remember Dustin said, "Nobody fart."
I had this panic look at my face in the picture, like, okay. We all gonna die. We all gonna die.
Yeah.
You were looking like, D. You had that look like this is some repugnant shit.
Right.
No, I had to look at my face like we're going over a quick hill in San Francisco down the hill, yo. And then your roof hits the roof of the cab because it's so damn angle.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. Right. That better be your hand.
So, right. And for those listening, you've got to understand that Adrian and Dwight are both over 6'5", 6'7", 6'8", right?
No, I'm
6'6" for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 6'4".
Yeah. Yeah, so both of you guys are really tall. So somebody's head going through the roof of the cab was a real reality that could have happened.
Looking like Fred Flintstone, yo.
Yeah. But meeting Greg and meeting Irene Gallo, and, because I didn't meet her in person. Dwight met her at a Dragon Con before we interviewed her, but I never met her in person.
Yep.
And meeting, absolutely. Lauren Panapinto, the art director, meeting her in person, and also just meeting listeners of the show over the course of years. We met Leland Purvis at the New York Comic Con. And got a chance to speak with him, after being, friends with him online and still remain friends with him even today. And I remember at Spectrum, I remember this guy, coming, off from moderating a panel, and, this guy pulling me aside and saying, hey, you're the host of SiDEBAR, and I just want to, let you know, how much the show has affected me and how important it is to me. And, I listen all the time, and you all have the greatest interviews, and it's inspired me so much in my career in my pursuits as an artist. And I just wanted to thank you. And he was kind of nervous acting, to meet me, and not because I'm great or whatever, but just because of the effect that the show has had on him and had on on a few others. And so I remember that being something really special. Spectrum is not a comic convention per se. It was an art experience, an art happening, an art festival, if you will. But that's always great too, and that does happen. Didn't that happen to you guys, where you were standing in line somewhere and somebody said, "Hey"?
Yeah.
And like at Charlotte or somewhere like that.
That was me. Standing in line for Popeyes chicken.
Yeah.
And we were standing in the convention center, waiting in line. And these two guys ahead of me were talking about the Hernandez brothers, because they were there. And they were talking about a recent story that was in the then current Love and Rockets magazine. And so they were talking about Browntown, which Jaime Hernandez wrote and drew. And so I think they were talking about some part of the story, and they misquoted it to one of the other brothers. I said, no, that was Jaime. Jaime drew that. And they both turned around and said, and they had like that tinge of recognition, like, are you Adrian from SiDEBAR? Yeah. Oh man, we love SiDEBAR. So we ended up getting our food and sitting down there for like 15 minutes, just talking about all things Hernandez brothers, just comics and everything. So it's just those chance encounters that are so wonderful, and it really just lets you know that people do hopefully listen to what you do. And it's gratifying, not in an egotistical way, but that someone is actually taking the time to listen to and remember your episode, and it's just great, always great to hear, always great to see.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I remember for the first time, man, when Swain and I went to the first Spectrum Fantastic Art Live in Kansas City. Yeah. And we're running late. We were running late, but the plane landed kind of strange or whatever, and we went to the hotel, got to the hotel, and they were doing, we wanted to see the grand premiere of Jeff Jones
Better
biopic.
Things. Yeah.
Better Things. And we get in
Better
there.
Things. Because it was that night, like it was the first night, maybe the night before the show actually started, and it was at like a small cinema.
And we get in there, and it's dark. And everybody's watching the movie. We get pulled in. We get ushered in by Kyle Bice and his wife Natalia. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, man. And it was like they recognized us. We know who they were, but they recognized us, man. That was very humbling, man. And then to see the fantastic painter, of Donatopia and his wife meet you and greet you.
Oh, James Gurney. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
Jim Gurney and his wife Jeanette.
Yeah, man, and to have them like constantly send books to us, and just there's so much, man. There's so much to be grateful for, man, and a lot of what you're saying, Adrian and Swain, as far as the convention. The convention is a confluence of like-minded individuals and love for a thing, and in these times, man, we need more of that. And I think this is where we need to get back to. It may not be the same ever again, but it can still happen again as long as we have people with like minds and individuals. So.
Yeah, I think as it relates to that, man, attending a convention or an art festival or a concept art, gathering, any of those things, part of all of it is, the planning and the traveling and the budgeting, the money to spend while you're gone, and you're talking with your people you're going to travel with, and everybody's excited. And you pile into the hotel room. Oh, this is nice. This is always what you say. Oh, this is nice. Right. And then you standing in line for panels and to get things signed or to purchase things, and looking through the program and trying to figure out where things are, if it's a really huge venue where the show is being held, and no sleep, and staying up late and having late night meals, or having breakfast, and everybody's kind of beat out, but you're having breakfast before you go back to the show and before the convention doors open, and then
late
the long, arduous
late
night drawing sessions, the long, arduous, sometimes grueling trip, getting back home, and then you get back home, and then maybe that even late that evening or the next day, you kind of pull out your wares, what you got, your keepsakes, and that collected thing that you were looking for that you couldn't find, or that one rare comic that sits right in your series that you were missing, that you found, or the art book or the sketchbook or just what have you. All of it is part of that. And I think the thing, like what Dee was just saying about the confluence of geekdom and nerddom and these intense interests, is Donald Glover is quoted as saying, being a nerd is just liking things that take work to like. It's just not easy. You can feed on everything that's in the mainstream and that the mainstream throws out there for you. But I guarantee you, in those streams that run off on the side, there's some goodness there, and that's really what it is. It just takes work to like the things that we like. And like Dee said, I do hope later this year we are able to get back to it. It may not be the same. It may be a combination of virtual and in person, but I too hope we get back to it as well.
That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.